So playing by the rules, Burr sports in the Murray Firth region from 1600 to 1800. So shifting here from references to golf, we're going to be looking at the early golf professionals. By early golf professionals, I mean the people who made a living at golf, not the professional golfers. Craftsmen were involved in the fabrication of golf clubs and balls, and they were scattered along the east coast of Scotland. Olive Geddes and David Hamilton both focused primarily on the trade of golfing materials between St. Andrews and Edinburgh, providing hints of the craftsmen farther north. But here, I'm going to give you detail about these northern craftsmen. Golf professionals in the northern boroughs were active members of their communities. Many of them were burgesses. It was evident these men were skilled in their trade and made a decent living from it, supplying local demand for equipment. Golf was played by sportsmen from a wide social spectrum, but they could not all afford the same equipment. Therefore, the type and the quality of the equipment varied. By the end of the 17th century, there were at least 4 different types of clubs in use. The typical wealthy player would have had a set of clubs consisting of wooden shafted clubs, of a play clubs, a scraper, iron face club, and a putting club. The play clubs had hardwood heads and were occasionally protected on the bottom with horn or bone to protect the club, obviously, when you're swinging from hitting the ground. The scraper, Olive Geddes interprets as a lofting club used to get extra height on the ball. Then there was the iron-headed club or bunkered club, mentioned in Wedderburn's vocabulary. That was used with great care in hazardous positions because a foul swing in that golf club would destroy the feather-filled ball. As you can imagine, metal-headed golf club, ball filled of feathers. James Ogilvy and his cousins in Cullen were playing golf in the 1690s and provide evidence of the different types of equipment used in the north, specifically the putting club. Ogilvy wrote to his cousins, his normal golfing companions, to come play with him near Boyne. As part of the jovial rivalry, he wrote, "If Mr. Patrick and you have a mind for the touch of long golf tomorrow, let me know this night, where I shall wait on you with a second. Or if ye would do me the great honour to come this length, because the links are better here. And then we shall see if you cannot make better use of your club in this country than you did at Eden. This is not to say that I doubt that you made good use of your short putting club there. So hoping ye will give the humble service to all your ladies and lords with you, I remain yours, James Ogilvy." The Ogilvy cousins were playing a complex and sophisticated game of golf in the 1690s, using different types of clubs, different styles of play out on the links. Golf balls also differed in quality and in size. Hamilton deduces that a professional golf ball maker can make up to 60 top-quality feather-filled balls a week, making them very expensive items. To make a golf ball, the leather was finely stitched together in the form of a ball, leaving a small opening. Then it was turned inside out, and with a ramrod, wet feathers were stuffed into the ball. The ball was then stitched closed and soaked, so it would harden, and if necessary, the ball maker, with deft strokes of his hammer, would lightly work the ball until it was round. And the players could use different types of balls in different quality and size, depending on their styles of play, as well as the condition and how much money they wanted to spend on one. So evidence of the northern craftsmen appear in the registers of the borough of Aberdeen, Banff, and Elgin, and provide information about their place in society as well as the popularity of the sport. On May 11th, 1642, the Aberdeen Town Council gave John Dixon a license to perform his craft. The said day grants license and tolerance to John Dixon for making golf balls within the borough during the town council's pleasure, and of his good carriage and behaviour, in respect that there is no such tradesman within the borough, and that he has produced testification from the town of Leith of his bygone good life and conversation amongst them. The above demonstrates the mobility of the skilled tradesman. Having moved from Leith with a letter of recommendation, he was able to practice his expertise within the borough. Prior to Dixon's arrival, the players of Aberdeen would have relied on imported golf balls from the south or ones they had made themselves. As well, this could indicate the sport was becoming increasingly sophisticated and popular within Aberdeen, as they could easily support their own ball maker. Adding further complexity, the town council regulated Dixon's trade, demonstrating a level of control over the production of golf equipment, in addition to governing where the sport was to be played. From 1642 onward, more golf professionals emerged in the records as you head westward along the coast. 7 years later in Elgin, George Watson, a golfer in Burgess in the borough, was involved in a litigation pertaining to a debt that he owed one Mr. Alexander Geddes, a skinner in Burgess there. On February 28, 1649, Watson was charged by the town council to make payment of £4 4 shillings to Geddes for the cost of golf clubs that he had bought from him but had failed to pay. An interpretation of this account gives that Geddes had two occupations. He was a skinner within the borough, also a club maker, or at least a salesman, showing that the craft of club making was also a lucrative business in this northern climate. 3 years later, Watson again appears in the town council records of Elgin as a golf ball maker, confirming that he continued his craft throughout these years. Again, we can see Elgin having golf as a sophisticated sport, needing club makers as well as ball makers. The same year as Watson's final litigation, in Banff, Alexander Gordon's daughter Elspeth was born. On her birth certificate, her father's occupation was club maker. Gordon, and later his son, supplied locals with clubs. Similarly to Watson, the Gordons were both Burgesses. James Gordon was admitted as a Burgess to the borough in 1691 as a club maker. His father's Burgess status was confirmed on his epitaph. Alexander's gravestone stated, "Here lies Alexander Gordon, Burgess of the borough, who died in his 80th year of age, in 1694." And his spouse, Alice Osborne, and their children, also Jean Scott, spouse to James Gordon, convener in Banff, their youngest son, who erected this stone in their memory. Stringing these pieces of evidence together, we have a family institution of club makers in Banff spanning at least 40 years, and it is possible that they were not alone in the craft. Back to the west, club makers featured highly in the Elgin Town Council records of 1659, along with wrights, masons, glasswrights, coopers, and bowers. Each of these crafts, when they had 7 members, were to elect a deacon, and a deacon was to represent them at the town council meetings. And when the deacons needed to join together, they would elect a convener, so one man speaking for all the craftsmen of the borough. And James Gordon, back in Banff, was one of those men. In Elgin, the town council protected elderly craftsmen, so they still had a right to elect a deacon for their craft as a representative. So we can see that club makers and ball makers were prominent within the skilled tradesmen of these boroughs, and they're all lifelong crafts. The boroughs protected elderly club makers' privileges, and the idea that you can identify someone as a golf professional, I think, is quite profound here, that golf was a business even 300 years ago. It wasn't just people out having fun. Now we're going to jump to the 18th century. Golf in the north slowly become more organized in the 18th century, possibly catalyzed by the formation of the Honourable Company of Gentlemen Golfers in Edinburgh. Cromarty in the 1650s had a bustling golf society, equipped with clubs supplied by James Fraser, a merchant of the Black Isle. Its members hit the links and enjoyed the hospitality of one of its esteemed members, William Forsyth, born 1722, died 1800. Hugh Miller's Memoir of William Forsyth recounted the golfing accomplishments of this Cromarty merchant. Miller wrote, "In the early, more active days of Mr. Forsyth, the national and manly exercise of golf was the favourite amusement among the gentlemen, and Cromarty, whose links furnished a fitting scene for the sport, was the meeting place of one of the most respectable golf clubs in the country. Sir Charles Ross of Balnagown, Sheriff MacLeod of Guineas, Mr. Forsyth, and the lairds of Newhall, Pontyfields, and Braylanguel were all of its members. Both the Sheriff and Sir Charles were very powerful men and good players, but it was remarked, however, that Mr. Forsyth, whose frame was not much above middle size, was singularly compact, and no one could strike a more skillful blow than him. In his younger days, he excelled in all other sports. Every golfing meeting of the golfing players cost him a dinner and at least a dozen or two of bottles of his best wine, for invariably, when they had finished their sport for the day, they would adjourn to his hospitality board to pass the evening in mirth and jollity. There was many jokes that went around as well about Forsyth. Although he was very generous, he always had his initials printed on everything, and there's a story that Forsyth sent one of his servants out because he had suspected that his bees had gone on to somebody else's property. And when he went over to Pontyfield, the young boy asked the laird, "I think these are Mr. Forsyth's bees." And Pontyfield said, "No, if they were, they'd had WF printed on every wing." The revelry that ensued at Forsyth's was kind and jovial, and Miller's account of the gathering for these men for golf and entertainment provides one of the clearest pictures of the social nature of the game in the Moray Firth, and it was strikingly similar to how golf was enjoyed in the major urban centres to the south, such as at the Brunsfield Links in Edinburgh or in Leith. Indeed, fine hospitality and wine went hand in hand with golf throughout the country. 19th hole entertainment and banter would subdue any of the wounded egos from the days round, and I'm sure there's few of us here today that haven't been consoled by a fine pint or dram after a not-so-illustrious round. Across the Moray Firth in Fraserburgh, as I noted before, a golf club was formed in 1777. The minutes of this meeting were regulations enacted by the club. You can see the writing is much better here than the secretary script that I've been dealing with before. So I'll read to you a few of these regulations. The subscribers hereby agree to meet at Fraserburgh the third Tuesday of every month of April, May, June, July, August, and September for the current year, and thereafter at the pleasure of the majority of the subscribers, for the purpose of golf and dining, which shall follow the following regulations. That dinner is to be on the table each of the above days in the house of John Donaldson in Fraserburgh precisely at 3 o'clock, and that each member of the company or subscriber is to pay 1 shilling sterling, whether present or not. That no person who is not of this club shall be entitled to dine unless he is introduced as a guest of one of the members. Number 3, that the subscribers agree that no more drink shall be called for or drunk during the subsistence of the club for the day than 1 bottle of claret for each member. Number 4, the company met this day shall elect a person for the day with the power to regulate all matters regarding the play of golf, and that the company present at this meeting. That a treasurer shall be annually elected, to whom each member is to pay the subscription for the dinner of the current year upon the first meeting in April yearly. Also, this treasurer will have the power to appoint a person who is to take care of the links, to whom each member is to pay a shilling yearly. Number 6, with regard to the rules of playing golf, the subscribers shall observe the printed rules and regulations in the hands of the treasurer for the time. The treasurer elected is Mr. John Dalrymple. The first 2 years of the membership, there was about 20 men that gathered together from a relatively large geographic region. And the creation of this club followed Enlightenment thinking. It was a manifestation of polite and civil society. Rules governed their behavior, both on and off the course. Whether their drink was moderated, like it says it was, is to be in a fly on the wall. On the practical level, the formation of the club and its members list provides an indication of who was involved at the elite level of the game. Golf, from 1777 onwards, in Fraserburgh ceased to be solely an informal pastime, but a regulated sport. The formality of the golf club in Fraserburgh and the physical recording of club rules seems to have been the major factor that separates what was happening in Cromarty from that was happening in Fraserburgh. And it's interesting to see that in these regulations we see the creation of a position for a greenskeeper, or a person to take care of the links. Although their salary was fairly low at only 20 shillings a year, the formalization of this profession demonstrates that golf in the Moray Firth during this time was well organized and played to a high degree of sophistication. Also, intriguingly, the Fraserburgh Golf Club was 3 years ahead of the forming of the Aberdeen Club. While these formal gatherings of golf clubs illuminate much about the growth of golf in the north, there's still much to be unearthed about wider participation throughout this region. While a lot of the records that I've showed you today are from the elite, there's still a huge amount of information that can be mined from Kirk Session records and further Burr records about wider participation, because you can find people, just your everyday craftsman in the borough, playing golf when he should be in church, and the church really doesn't like that, and he was fined accordingly and had to sit in front of the church and beg for forgiveness. So you can find references to that, or people playing golf in the churchyards and being fined for breaking windows and things like that. So there's still lots more research out there to be done. The Moray Firth has been largely a neglected area of sport history. Moreover, the overwhelming majority of literature on sport history in the early modern period of sport history largely neglects the early modern period. Sport, however, in this region of the country, as I have demonstrated, was vastly complex and had its own intricate history. By examining sport through the lens of the borough, it is possible to ascertain the great detail and character of these different sports. Using golf as an example, it is clear to see that sport and education were interwoven. Also to see that golf was a beneficial and healthy exercise that was promoted as an acceptable form through a wide social spectrum. Golf history in the north is just starting to emerge, and the sheer number of locations where golf was played demonstrates that it was a vastly popular sport. The histories of golf in Aberdeen, Banff, Dornoch, Elgin, Fraserburgh need to be acknowledged in order to create a new history of the game that has a more northward focus, instead of looking solely at the metropolis of golf and the golf being played at Montrose, Edinburgh, and Leith. Golf was played to a high degree of sophistication here in Dornoch and elsewhere in the region, and as a result, there was a local demand for equipment. Skilled tradesmen, such as golf club makers and golf ball makers, were active members of their community and obtained a moderate level of prestige within the borough, being burgesses. These craftsmen supplied their wares to eager sportsmen who paid a great deal of money for new or repaired equipment. Golf and good cheer remains an important part of life here in the Moray Firth, and I'm sure some of you partook in that quite recently with this beautiful weather that we've had, as well as the playing of the Carnegie Shield. 400 years ago, a young schoolboy headed out onto the Dornoch links with golf clubs that his uncle had purchased for him. And since then, people young and old continue to take the opportunity to come here to Dornoch to play on the links. I'd like to thank the Royal Dornoch Golf Club again for inviting me to speak with you here. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask.